to LOA Today. I'm Walt Jason.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Joel, I have a couple pieces of information to pass along. First, some news. I mentioned last week that after years of dealing with the fact that I couldn't handle the technology, I had successfully released the Apple version of the LOA Today app, which is wonderful. And it's been out there for a week. Hopefully people have been downloading it and taking advantage of it. The next item on the list of things to be done was, well, no, I needed to get the Android version out there. And that in the past would have been an easier task.
Right.
It is now no longer an easier task. In some ways, it's a harder task because Google, in its infinite craziness, has put some new rules in place that are kind of head scratchers, to be perfectly honest. One of which is before your app can be released, it has to be tested by at least 20 testers in a closed group.
Ah, okay.
Never mind that you don't have 20 testers. Sorry, you can't publish without it. But by the same token, there is no criteria as to who those testers could be, which begs the question, well, then why are we doing this? What's the point?
How do they know that 20 people tested? How do they know that?
I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to hazard a guess. I think the guess is you have to have a Google account. So there's got to be at least 20 Google accounts. Now, does that mean 20 different people? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a loophole there somewhere. And I think
at least one.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least one.
I don't really care about that. I'm just now interested in beating their loophole. That's all I care about now. I just want to
I'm glad you have straightened that out. Thank you for being clear. We appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, it's all that stuff's great. You know, the 8 people that listen to us that have the Android phone, that's all that matters. I mean, sorry, but
exactly. Well, this is actually a serious thing. Because lately I've been paying attention to our demographics. We actually have demographics. I didn't know if you knew that, but we have demographics of people who listen to this. Would you believe that 98, and I'm not exaggerating on this, 98% of our listeners are iPhone users?
Well, of course. I knew that. I mean, they're civilized people.
Well, I can't say that everyone who has appeared on the show feels that way, just because Alex Standy liked to refer to the iPhone as the fruit phone because it comes from Apple. That was her way of dissing the Apple iPhone because she's an Android user. Let's put it this way. Alex is going to be getting a phone call from me saying, I need 20 users and you're one of them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that would be good. So, yes, I think that helps.
But because we have such a limited number of Android listeners, I need to appeal to all of them.
Well, of course. I mean, I would venture a guess in our demographics of our Android users. Most of them don't have regular dental visits either. I'm just throwing that out there.
Oh, God. Are you trying to help me or are you trying to hinder me? I sometimes not 100% sure.
I'm just throwing it out there, Walt. I'm thinking about demographics, you know.
No, seriously, if you're an Android user, we would really appreciate it if you would help out. Just send me an email, walt@loatoday.net, and I'll get you into that testing program because the problem is until I get it tested by 20 people, they won't let me release it to the public, which is kind of silly.
It's all absurd. I'm kidding, of course, but this is all absurd. It's craziness.
Yeah. And it doesn't, they think it actually protects people because it prevents scammers from creating groups of 20 people. The logic of that one just really escapes.
Well, I mean, it seems to me scammers would be more organized, could easily get 20 people.
I would think.
Yeah.
I mean, and the other myth is, well, then the scammers have to pay to do this. Like the scammers don't have any money.
The scammers are going to be scamming, and they'll use the profits from the previous scams to, of course.
This is, I'm not somebody who, there are people who like to bash the big ones, the big behemoths like Google. I don't really like to bash. Well, I like to sometimes do it out of fun, but I'm not anti-Google, so I'm not going to come crashing down on Google. I'm just going to kind of shake my head in dismay and say, really?
Yeah.
Is that the best you can do?
Yeah. I mean, they don't always, I'm a Google shareholder, so I'm a big Google
Oh, okay.
fan.
Yeah.
So let's be careful where we're talking here. Okay.
That's right. So please, listeners, please help us. If you're an Android user, help us to make Google happy by giving them 20 testers. And by the way, you actually get something cool out of it. You get to listen to the LOA Today app, which has all the different podcasts on it. It's got a bunch of terrific audiobooks, and it's got a video book, and it's got some written books too. It's got a lot of really cool information on it. So it's not like this is a waste of time.
Exactly. Yes.
Plus, you also get to find out more about Joel and Anne-Marie and Jolie Lynn and all the people who've been co-hosts in the past. There's little bios on all of them. It's all this cool stuff about the LOA Today show. So, help us out. Give me an email. Let's get this going.
Let's do that.
All right. Now, today's topic is synchronicity. It comes out of a post, as usual, that you shared on Facebook, in which the post was about, I don't remember exactly what the word was that the post used, but the basic idea was coincidence. Things just happening coincidentally. Mere coincidence is the way I often like to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
Randomness, I think that was the word that was used in the post. Random things happening. And it kind of stimulated in my mind, well, is there anything that's really random? Because that's what I used to believe years ago. And now I realize, no, nothing's random. It's all connected. At least that's what my belief system is. But that isn't necessarily what everybody's belief system is. So I said, well, that's a topic.
Absolutely.
Why don't we kind of explore this a little bit?
I have an odd connection to the coincidence or synchronicity is sort of it's the same bedfellow as placebo. If that makes sense,
it makes total sense.
Yeah. So it's there's people that say, well, it's just the placebo effect. When I think the placebo effect is an incredible effect.
Yeah.
So mere coincidence is just discounting the sort of the fabric of the universe to me. There's we all have this the energy that we put out. This is sort of the theory of the law of attraction of what we put out we attract. Well, when we're out there connecting and this goes on, we're the behind the scenes, the destination that we're eventually hoping to achieve in life is an illusion. Mm-hmm. It is simply the illusion exists to allow you to implement the journey to reach your destination. And that's where coincidence and synchronicity, that's how you met these plot twists where things turn left and turn right, and people discover something that they never would have discovered. And it's very few people. I posted earlier today also that my life has not turned out remotely in any way, shape, or form as I intended it to turn out. It hasn't. And as I said after that, made the statement, thank God.
Yeah, right. Thank God.
It's far better. But the crazy chain of events that has me sitting in, on the suburbs of Richmond, Virginia right now, doesn't seem possible. There's a bunch of crazy chain, seemingly non-connected chains of events that put me in the right place to meet this person that led me here to leave. And that's the fascinating part for me. That's why I sort of enjoy life so much. I get up every day expecting that. I'm looking for that. The people that come into my orbit, the seemingly benign encounters can sometimes just lead to amazing things. And it's just, to me, it's just exciting to watch happen. So watching that all unfold and how anybody, and I'm not judging anyone, everybody has different experiences in life, but I just find it hard to not see it. It's just it's so out there. And when, I always tell people pay attention to every connection, pay attention to every situation, even the ones that are seemingly annoying, or they put you in the wrong place at the right time or right time at the right place. There's things that are going to take place that seem to maybe divert your path, but maybe that diversion is necessary.
Yeah. Well, I can take it a step further. I can tell you that before I came to not just understand, but to accept that this concept is not just a concept, that it's the way life really is, I was kind of honestly afraid of it. In fact, I think it's fair to say that I dreaded it.
Really?
Like there was a piece of me that said, oh God, if that's true, I mean, this life is crap. This life is foobar. That's literally the way I thought about it.
Wow.
And so when I remember some of the first times you and I talked about it in the early years of the podcast, we would talk about this kind of stuff.
Yes.
And I was always trying to be enthusiastic because that's what you do when you're the host of the show and so forth. But there was a piece of me that was saying, oh God, really?
Yeah.
That's where we're heading. I don't know if I can handle this. Please, can I get off this bus?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people that have that attitude, and they sort of get stuck in the grind. Uh, the idea that as we age, as we sort of just accept life on, as it's sort of delivered to us, and our expectations of change or new connections sort of falls off. And so, of course, now we're not putting out there, so it does tend to go that way. But what an amazing concept when you realize, as long as you keep this going and you keep putting yourself, it's an amazing way to do it. It feels so, just everything that happens, on any given day, the odd, I have this funny thing that happens at least once or twice a week. I'll have let's say I have 7 appointments on an average day. And, maybe twice a week, 3 times a week, somebody will call out. It'll be, I can't be there, whatever reason, right? Last minute. I'm fine with that. I use that time to write or do other things. And the concept for me was, okay, I just missed an appointment. But almost inevitably, I will get a message from somebody, hey, something came up, can you talk? And I'll say, you're not going to believe this, but I had an opening that just literally 5 minutes ago is now, and that happens so much, a lot.
Yeah. I experience more and more of the same thing myself. I know for the longest time, like I said, I was kind of afraid of it. So even if I did notice it, I would dismiss it. I think it's where the dismissal part comes from. We get afraid of it. But there were also lots of times when things like that would happen, and I would just miss it. I would just not notice it.
Right.
I think that actually happens more often. I think it's much more often that the coincidence happen, and because we aren't paying attention to it, we just don't see it. It's just, it's kind of like one of those slapstick movies or something where, there's this crazy thing going on in the background. The lead character has no idea it's happening. Everybody that, with the people watching the movie, they can all see it happening. The lead character is completely oblivious to it. It's that kind of a thing.
It is. And if you look at the odds of it, really anything, any encounter with, I was born in a small town in Florida, and everybody that's in that small town that I grew up with, I mean, it's pretty obvious I'm interacting with them. But as time has gone on, and I've slowly worked my way up, up the coast, so to speak, over years, there were meetings, there was connection, and a lot of times it was calamity that made us connect. I mean, my story in particular, all my connections now are basically made from the total debacle of my 20s, where everything just fell apart, and it put me in a whole different. So my career, there is no way that I ever could have imagined when I was 15 years old that I'd be doing what I'm doing, much less in Richmond, Virginia. It's just, there wasn't a plausible path here. But yet all these events that happened, that connection, and it put me there. I tell a story about me eating out of a trash can on the bench and how that later became very instrumental in my relationship with my son, TJ.
Right.
And so there's a lot of things that have taken place that, as I look backwards on them, it's like, oh my God, that came together perfectly. If this didn't happen at that time and I didn't meet this person, that would have happened. The guy that hired me to come up to Virginia came down to South Carolina to see the treatment center we had there. And I wasn't expecting anything out of that. He eventually hired me, and I came up, became the director of that program. I assumed that's why I was here. But after 5 years, that didn't work out. And so I ended up in my own private practice, which has been wildly successful. And, it's when I've become an author, I've become a public speaker. I've exceeded any possible expectations I'd ever have of myself, all because of these random events. And some of them weren't good, but they later turned out to be good. And that's the beauty of it.
So let me ask you something, because we've heard that story many times, and we love it every time. I do anyway. Each time that you tell the story, it's always from the point of view of you couldn't possibly have believed it.
Right.
But just for the sake of argument for a second here, let's pretend that you might have believed it. Would you have trusted it?
No. No, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm talking about that at that point in time.
At that point in time,
I would have. Yeah.
Right.
Obviously today I'd be like, yeah, let's hop on board with this. But back then it never felt like it was flowing the right way. It was always like, and one of the things that happened when I moved up here, the first week I was working for the company that the gentleman that hired me, the treatment center that hired me, uh, I didn't know he was just a rageaholic wild man. I mean, so my first week there, I moved my son up. I sold my house in South Carolina. I mean, I came full bore up here to make a life.
Right.
And the first week, he went on this total rage rant filled event that I'm like, oh my God, what have I got myself into? It was, I was like, this is not a stable man. Now, him and I became friends. It worked out. He really never raged toward me, but we were able to. But the whole point of the story was I was never intended to be more. The event there was a 5-year stint to make a lot of connections that eventually would allow me to get into private practice. That's how I look at it. Now, I was oblivious to all this while it was happening the entire time. And that's the beauty of it. And when I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, that happened in Synchronicity so many times.
That's a key point, a very important point that you just made there, that synchronicities, when they happen, rarely seem to connect. We can only see them after the fact in most cases. In some cases, we can tell when they're happening, but most often we don't see them until sometimes long afterward. Sometimes it can take years before we get enough perspective to be able to piece it all together.
Right. Well, and that's the me moving. I chose this house that we live in currently because of the proximity to where I was working, at the treatment center, plus the school system that we're in are great for my kids. So that's why I sort of chose this location. And over time, my neighbors became very good friends. Section of those neighbors have become very, very close friends. We've gone on vacation together. It's just this odd combination of things, but chance meetings, seemingly chance meetings. I have nothing in common with a lot of people around me, but yet we get so connected, and so that's why I wake up every day just what's going to happen next. I love it. I'm not scared of anything anymore happening. There's nothing happening out there to scare me, but I do look for these synchronicities and connections and mere coincidences, which I love. Is just so I pay attention, and sometimes they're nothing. That's the beauty of it. You never know. Sometimes they are maybe just a coincidence. I mean, but not really. It doesn't have to be my coincidence. That's another part. This could be part of somebody else's journey. I could just have, but and how many times have you thought about somebody you haven't spoken with a while, all of a sudden they pop up on your radar, they text you, they call you, or whatever? That happens a lot. So all of this stuff is in play, and I believe everything exists that it is intended to make this journey. It all works together with all the people, but it's intended to happen to have your journey continue. There is no destination in my book. This body one day will die, but there's not a place that I'm going to get to physically here that I'm going to be like, okay, well, I'm wrapping up. And some people actually like that idea. They're going to retire and just sit on the beach, and they're going to be fine with that. I have no problem with that. That's not going to be my journey. That's my journey is going to be, something. We still have some crazy coming up. I still have plenty of crazy left. I promise you there's crazy left.
Yes, which is a good thing, by the way. I know you're not saying that in a way that's scary.
No. Just my world is always,
right. Exactly. Yeah. Now, this also ties to talk about synchronicity. We talked about synchronicity in the earlier episode today. And I knew we were talking about synchronicity in this show, so probably there was a piece of my subconscious mind that was bringing that in. But what really blew my mind is how deeply and how quickly we went into it with almost no input from me. I mean, my guest for the day, our guest, Anne Marie, and my guest, just went off the deep end on it almost immediately. And I was sitting there listening to her as she's talking and loving what she was saying and thinking to myself, this synchronicity stuff, we put words like mere next to it, mere coincidence, just synchronicity. And there's nothing mere about it. There's nothing, it is all connected. And I think the key thing that makes it more meaningful, makes it more real for me in terms of my understanding, in terms of being aware of it, is when I'm just letting it be what it is, it no longer matters whether or not it's a a coincidence or a synchronicity that's leading to something for me. I think that's what you were kind of pointing to a moment
Right.
ago. But
Right.
but I kind of take it to the step of, I don't know who this is working out for. I know that in the long run, in the broader scope of things, it's working out for me. I can't necessarily see. I usually can't see how it's piecing together for my own situation, but it's also playing out in ways that I never see, not just for myself, but for other people. In fact, that's one of the things that I like to do when we have a guest on. I like to say to the guest, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, thank you for what you are putting out there to people who are consuming it in ways that you never know about. Because you never get thanked for that, but it's important because you're helping people all the time. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about here with
Yes.
synchronicity. Stuff comes out of it that we never even see. We were never
Oh,
aware of it. And
well,
it plays out anyway.
it does, and you know, and that's the beauty of it. It's that everybody's involved. It's not all about me. It's not all about you. It's just everybody has the same thing going on, which is fascinating. I have one of my clients is he's a medical student in medical school. He's a third year. That's a very intense world.
Oh God.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have a lot of free time.
No.
So he, you know, he's always wanted a girlfriend. He's always looking for a girlfriend. He tried that dating apps. They are just usually awful. You know, at least for his experience.
Mhm.
And so I said, you're trying too hard. Just relax. And so he texted me one day and said, you know, would you go with me to this? There was a speaker at the University of Richmond that was talking about neuroscience and neuroplasticity.
No.
And you know, for most people, it'd be like, yeah, but I was like, yes, I would definitely like to
Sure,
go
that's
there.
fun. Yeah.
So you know, I'm getting there. I'm getting ready to go. I have a client that has an emergency. I have to go to the hospital. Okay. So I text him. He said, I'm already here. And I said, well, sorry. And so I go to the hospital, make sure my client's fine. I had to wait with my client till his parents got there. And in the meantime, this lady sits down by him in the seat that he was saving for me. She's also a medical student. She's a year ahead of him and has no time to date. Well, they just start talking. They just talk, you know, talking about the concepts, and they have this incredible bond. And he
Right.
didn't even realize it. And so he afterwards over, he was like, really nice meeting. She started to walk off, and she goes, look, I normally wouldn't do this. I was hoping you would ask, but here's my phone number. And they have been dating now for a couple of years and are probably going to be getting married. And
Fantastic.
that was just random, but yet, you know, is that a coincidence or whatever that was? Just that chain of it. My client ended up being fine, you know. So I mean, it's this perfectly timed thing that most people will dismiss as, oh yeah, but that you can't dismiss those things. They just keep happening over and over and over again.
I have also come to the realization that I no longer believe in randomness. That's a big deal for me because I always had a very strong mathematical bent to my way of thinking. And the theory of randomness is a big part of mathematics. But I've come to the realization it doesn't exist.
Well, and I will push back on you a little bit because maybe have a different meaning for randomness, at least in my brain. Randomness is the fabric of synchronicity. It's to me, and again, I'm probably using it out of context, but in my mind, it's like a big soup. It's just our energy takes from the random and makes it connected. It's a tool. It's not what most people think randomness is. It's just, to me, you know, I have an app on my phone that is a coin flip app, and if we're two restaurants I want to go to, flip a coin. Which one we're going to go to? Do I want to do something? Flip a coin. You know, I consider whatever chain of events happens after that. It was a simple solution. I flipped a coin, and whatever chain of events was, and you know, oftentimes it's no chain of event at all. It's just we go out to eat and have fun. But every now and then you run into somebody, or this happens, and it's sort of cool, you know. And I'm not saying there's, in the context of traditional definition of randomness, I agree. But for a long time, I've always, randomness is part of the formula for synchronicity to me.
I agree with what you're saying because of the way you defined it. I totally
Yes.
agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that what I was trying to express is the traditional randomness doesn't exist because the traditional randomness is dependent upon the idea that things don't happen for a reason.
Yes. Well, and that I agree with. But I look at, the ocean, and a hurricane comes along. The ocean is totally, totally messed up. It all waves everywhere, water's displaced, sand erodes, all those things happen. But on the other side of that, there's always something. There may be some land that's damaged or this happened, but over here, this has been, the island that hadn't been around for a long time has reappeared because of this storm. So there's, it's just all these things happen. There's the sea. If the sea were stagnant and didn't have storms and waves, we would be done. I mean, we need that. We need all that. That's all there for a reason. So the seemingly random chaotic event of weather and stuff eventually becomes a catalyst for something else. It's all part of it.
And in fact, what we're talking about directly plays into the original topic of the show from years ago, law of attraction. Because without that, I don't know how else to say it, the discounting of randomness, without the discounting of randomness, law of attraction can't operate. There has to be a, quote, violation of the law of randomness, unquote,
right,
in order for law of attraction to be possible.
Right.
And when you begin to recognize that, wow, that random coin flip should, at any given time, it should come up 50% tails, 50% heads. But when it keeps coming up tails over and over and over again, you start saying, okay, how long am I willing to go with that theory?
Yeah. And that's the, as we look at this and as we sort of, you could flip a coin 100 times and you could flip heads 10 times. The next flip of the coin, there's no favor to tails.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. It's just, it's a totally sort of random kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, but yet you'll find patterns in that, like life, it's all the underpinnings of all this. I think the law of attraction, it obviously thrives on, it requires synchronicity. It requires, to put it out. Your job with the law of attraction is to put out what you want, because the law of attraction is going to attract what you're feeling anyway. So our goal is to start feeling the right things to get what you want. And it pulls from this pool of seemingly random events and people and things to fill the void. It's like a gigantic workshop to say, here's the person, the situation, everything that exists, you're attracting. And it comes together. It's just a fascinating thought when you look at it that way. You can't really describe it, but you can feel it. I know that sounds weird.
No, it doesn't sound weird at all. It actually makes total sense. In fact, I'm going to make a reference to a field that you generally stay away from for very good reason, which is the field of gambling.
Yes.
And I'm going to tie it directly into playing online poker, which I actually don't do much anymore. I used to do it a lot, but I played for the first time recently after about a year and a half layoff. So it's been a while. But the point is, when I'm playing poker, you can always tell who's playing well. And by playing well, I mean they're winning. Doesn't necessarily mean they're good at it. That's the key point. It just means they just keep hitting. And if I see somebody who's winning and winning, and I get an opportunity to go head to head with them, I will try to talk myself out of going there, no matter how good my hand is, no matter how bad I know their hand is. Because I've seen it over and over again. When they're in that groove, when it's being in the flow, I think that's what they sometimes call it. When you're in that flow, things come together for you. So you could have the worst possible hand, and there's only one combination of 3 cards that could possibly hit that would give you what you want, and that's exactly what that person gets. When that happens a few times, you start saying, okay. In fact, a lot of people do say it. They complain, well, this is a fixed game. Poker Stars or whatever is, they fixed this game. It's all a great big ruse. Well, kind of. You just picked the wrong enemy. It wasn't Poker Stars. It was the law of attraction and somebody being in alignment with their own vibration.
Well, it's funny you mentioned gambling because this happened to me. You know, for those that don't know, I've been in recovery for a long time with a gambling addiction. Uh, and how I got hooked on gambling, I don't talk about this much.
Hmm.
I was at a gambling establishment in Florida many years ago. I was 18 years old, and there's a game called Highlight,
Mm-hmm.
and it's you bet on it. And it's a it's a silly game to bet on, obviously.
It
Uh,
really is.
but I bet on it, and I knew nothing about it. So they had a thing called a pick seven, where you gave them seven numbers and you were picking the winner of seven races. And the odds of that were pretty slim, or seven games, they call them games. And I didn't know what to do. I wasn't really there I didn't want to gamble. I didn't even know what gambling really was. So I played my phone number. You
Nice.
know, I just played my phone number. So I sat there, there was some beer, we were drinking some beer, and I was bored. And so one of my friends was sort of into it. And I finally said, look, we got to get out of here. He says, only one more game, let's go. So after the game was over, I sort of forgot about this ticket that I had in my pocket. And they said, oh, we have a winner in the pick seven. And then they flashed the number, and he looks at me and he goes, oh, if you'd have played your phone number, you would have won $14,000. And I was like, I did play my phone number, and I won $14,000 on a $2 bet. And so, I didn't immediately start gambling a lot, but I used some of that money eventually over time to gamble some more. I tended to win. I bet on sports. I tended to win. First time I went to Vegas, I won $5,000 and left with $5,000. So I had a big winning streak in the beginning. The most gamblers that get hooked have a winning streak.
I'm sure.
And then you have that. Then it goes sideways for a while. Then you can't win worth anything, right. And then that's when everything falls apart. And it's shocking how that trend plays out with people. It happens over and over again. So what you're saying, when you encounter somebody that's on a hot streak, I've watched a guy in a casino one night. He was so drunk. He was ridiculously drunk. He had two escorts, I guess is the appropriate word to say. He's about 70 and they're about 22.
Right.
And he was so drunk, he was hitting shots, and he was blindly betting gigantic numbers at blackjack. He was so drunk. He had a $5,000 bet on a hand of blackjack, and he had a 17, and the dealer is showing a 6. And he tells the dealer to hit. Well, he gets the 3, and I forget what happened. And then the 3 would have helped the dealer. He took the 3, then the dealer got the bus card. He won by hitting on a 17 against a 6, which is taboo. It just right. It doesn't work. And he won all these, and he wasn't even paying attention. There were chips. He gathered his chips. He was dropping $100 chips all over the place. He's walking off, and I'm sitting there losing 12 hands in a row. I'm like, oh, and I saw that he was on fire.
Yeah.
And he didn't care. He he was just having fun.
Which is, by the way, a major piece of it. He didn't care.
Well, to me, that you sort of filled in the blank, because in the beginning when I started gambling, I didn't care. It was fun.
Right.
I won $14,000. Wow, that's sort of a cool thing. But when I started doing it more and more, and I started like getting mad when I would lose, then it became a big event.
Oh yeah.
And then it occupied my brain, and then it was always, well, I'm going to win and I'm going to quit. I'm going to win. I'm going to quit. And you never do that. So, but gambling is a great example of that. People, when I was selling insurance for my father, which was a miserable job, by the way, I hated doing insurance, but the selling part I was good at, the paperwork part I was not. But, I would go sell, 22, 23, I'd go sell these gigantic commercial policies, and and I would walk in, don't even really know what I'm doing. I just talk and and say things, and they basically, if somebody else did the proposal, I just presented it, and I was always getting these deals. As my things fell apart for me and I was desperate for money, I couldn't sell anything. My energy, I couldn't sell. I mean, I got embarrassed at even going in. They're not going to buy from me. I had this very negative inner dialogue. So as our perspective, changes and we see things differently, that affects all of this as well. But when you're expecting great things to happen, you're expecting your life to be going forward. You're looking out for the synchronicities or the coincidences as sort of roadmaps to what's next. I mean, every day I want to know what's next.
Yeah, and that's the much better side to be on, because that's the side that says, well, I don't really care all that much, but I'm enjoying the ride. This is kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, and like this journey that I keep talking about, I love my journey. I have no idea, I'm capable of picking up everything and moving across the country tomorrow. I could.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not planning on that, but I'm also capable of just doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I can do. I have that in me. I have that. Let's see where this takes us kind of mentality. It's sort of fun. Let's see how this works out. And it's just. I don't. A lot of people hate change, and I did for a long time. I love change. I love to embrace, because change brings change. It brings something for, and I don't know what it's going to bring, but there's something coming with change.
It's a very important point too, because the flip side is, why is it that people are so afraid of change? And if I can express my view on why people are so afraid, I think it's because they believe that the change is going to be for the worse for themselves. They may not ever be willing to express that directly, but I think deep down, that's what they're thinking. If I change, my life's going to get worse.
Everybody, I mean, the human beings have a bias toward homeostasis. We don't want anything to change. That's a survival technique. Goes way back to the caveman days. You're in the cave, stay in the cave. You don't go out there. It's dangerous out there. Stay in the cave.
Which is kind of tough when you're hungry, but that's another point.
Yeah, well, that's how that eventually you got to go get that. Well, in today's world, the idea, like, why change it? It's working so well.
Yeah.
What if, and I look at it the other way, we're meant to go out. We're meant to go experience change. For many years, from about 20, this is mainly due to my addiction, any change I had was horrible. It was catastrophic. There was no good. Getting fired from my dad's company, eventually getting fired from the next company and being arrested, losing any ability to make a living, and all that. I lost all that. And so change to me was always scary until I turned things around. Then I started to realize change is moving forward. Change is, every change I've made since I turned my life around has led to an incredibly positive results. I embrace change. It comes along with the coincidence, synchronicity of all this.
I remember many of the early episodes that you and I recorded together, which were basically about me trying to figure out how to change my mindset around based on things that you were telling me that had worked for you.
Right.
And me trying to wrap my head around, well, okay, that's what he did, but I can't seem to do that. Why can't I do that? What's it going to take for me to make that change? What's going to take for me to make that shift and to stick with it and to believe in it? And it all seemed impossible. I mean, I was trying to embrace the possibility of it, but by the same token, there was that piece of me, fairly large piece of me, that was saying, "Yeah, forget that. It ain't happening. It's not going to happen. We're wasting a lot of time here. We're blowing a lot of smoke. We are. Come on, let's be honest about it. That's really what's going. That's what happened in my brain.
Yeah,
that's what was going on in my brain. So over the years, one of the questions I've constantly tried to ask, there are lots of ways I've tried to ask this, is what's it take to shift that? What's it take to make that change in perspective so that I stop thinking about something as something to be afraid of and start thinking about it as something to anticipate and look forward to? And one of the things I have found that for me kind of turns the whole thing around is when something works out well, my immediate inclination is to be shocked by it and take my attention away because I was shocked by it. When I can give myself just enough time to say, whoa, that was shocking, and kind of sit with that shock for a little bit, for whatever reason, I get myself into a better space for appreciating the event. I have to let myself deal with the shock. It's the shock that I think, for me, epitomizes that resistance point, that fear that, oh my God, I can't change. I've got to stay in that homeostasis. It's the shock of whatever the event is. And it can be little events. We're not talking about we're not talking about saber-toothed tigers. It could be, I found a penny. What did I find a penny for? I mean, it can be that small. But when these things start to happen, when things start to fall into place, it's a shock. Like, there's another one that fell into place. Well,
And also getting to a place where it's no longer shocking. I'm in a place right now like, well, that worked out great. Yeah, that's sort of what I was expecting. And it isn't that I'm not grateful for it, but of course, I mean, that's what I was shooting for, something close to that, and I just come to expect things are going to work out. When things seem to fall apart, one of the things that I learned a long time ago in working with clients is my process is developing a rapport with people. It is not a fast process. So, if somebody, comes and see, I want to be fixed in a session or two, no, you're getting the wrong person. So what I used to not understand is I would have clients come along, I'd meet with them 2 or 3 times, they would just sort of disappear, and I'm going, what did I do wrong or whatever, how come that didn't stick? Or then I started noticing, a couple years later, this person who I met with, I wasn't ready back then, but I never forget what you said during those sessions, and then they come back, So I've come to, even when I meet somebody, like I tell somebody when they meet with me, especially a younger person, look, I don't care what your parents want. If you don't want to come back, I don't want you to come back. If it's not helpful, I don't want you coming just because your parents are saying it. I want you to want this process. Sometimes, and first of all, they really appreciate that. And I'll tell the parents, if he doesn't want to come back, I'm not the person to force him to see. That defeats what I'm trying to accomplish. But often, because I do that, almost always anybody I've ever told it comes back because of that seed I planted, and that, then they're ready. They already know what they're going to be. Now they're ready.
Yeah, that being ready. That's what I was referring to when I was talking about, being okay with the shock of it.
Yes.
I mentioned at the beginning of the show, and I was reiterating what I had said the last time you and I did a show, that the LOA Today app for iPhone is out. Well, the day that I made the breakthrough, because I had been doing a lot of things that needed breakthroughs, and I'd gotten through a lot of them, but there was one final one that I was just like pounding my head against the wall, trying to figure out, how do I get this last, I got the feeling, if I get this last thing done, the thing's going to publish, which is exactly what happened, by the way. But up until the day where I tried the thing that I needed to try, I'd actually got myself convinced that this is a waste of time. I'm not getting anywhere. I mean, I've been going at this for weeks now. I mean, literally weeks. I had fixed the app a month before. I was trying to publish it for that last month. And all the little pieces that are involved in publishing it just kept defeating me. You get that happening often enough, you start to believe it,
Absolutely, yeah.
But for whatever reason, I woke up that morning, and I knew what I was going to try. I always have some idea of what I want to try next. I knew what I wanted to try. For some reason, that morning I woke up and I said, this is a good day to try it. It wasn't a dread day, if you know what I mean. It wasn't a day of, oh God, this is another one that's going to fail. It was, this one feels better. And what was really amazing about it is it worked the first time I tried it, which was, I don't know how to describe how rare that is when you're up against it, especially with software. When you're trying every which way to make a software work and everything you try doesn't work, the idea of getting it right the first time, that's kind of like, hitting the lottery.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. Well, that's exactly what happened. I hit the lottery that day.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's that perspective. And then, when you allow that as a possibility, that then becomes more of a possibility, when you start realizing that, and that, and that's sort of the thing, is just getting to a place where, also to me, the main thing to understand the law of attraction, you're going to attract whatever you're going to attract, but it doesn't always show up as you planned it. It doesn't always show up. I mean, and it's people that implement the law of attraction tend to, my theory has always been, there's basically 2 categories. You want a relationship of some type using the law of attraction, or you want more money. It's usually those 2 categories.
I'll throw health in there, but I get your point.
Yeah, generally the most people I deal with, but health comes, as a certainly third, I would assume. But you almost always end up seeing the results in the subcategory of what you intended more
Yes.
than you did. It almost always happens.
Yes.
You and I have shared that experience with a guy a long time ago. Don't remember his name, but he literally commented on the show. He said, "Look," he said, "I've been using the law of attraction I need more money. That hasn't worked." And we asked the question, "How's everything else going?" "Oh, everything else is great. My health
That
is
was the guy in
improved."
California. I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. My health has improved greatly. My relationship's better, but I haven't got more money. I go, well,
Right.
you're doing it right with the other categories. You're doing too much. You're overthinking. You want it too much on that. So that was you see how that can happen.
Yeah.
And
God, yes.
Yeah.
I don't have to just see it. I feel it. I experienced it.
Yeah.
We've all experienced it.
Yeah. Money for me for the longest time was, because I have a gambling addiction, money was a big, I have a really weird view of money. Money is a scarcity. I never had much, I gambled it all away. I lost a lot of it. So money for me was something that I worked really hard. I never understood why I couldn't get ahead. I was showing success, but I barely had enough every time. And once I understood, I was focusing on the lack of money, and my drive was worrying about money. Once I just sort of let all that go, it doesn't make the top 100 now. Money's not a thing anymore. It doesn't, and I'm not trying to be Mr. Big Shot or brag. I'm saying money comes easily. I have plenty of it. It's something that I'm not worried about anymore. But it's amazing when you adjust your perspective of it, how you can start attracting it, and the events, the synchronistic events that will lead to more of that. It's just, I have business deals call me, I have many opportunities every week present. I turn down 90% of the things that come my way. But I look at every single one of them.
Yeah, because you never know which one's going to be the one that is
Yeah.
going to grab your attention and say, yeah, that feels right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the feeling is the secret. So that's the one that you want to be paying attention to. I'm also reminded that as I was working through the software, like I said, I went through the story that I told you in terms of getting the LOA Today app done. And I am up to the point where I described earlier with the Android version of the app. While I'm waiting for that to play itself out, while I'm waiting for listeners who are Android listeners to send their emails in so I can get them into the test program, I'm not just sitting around. I'm going on to the next project. I have like 4 different software projects in mind. That was the first one. Okay. So the second one is for my gardening service. My gardening service desperately needs to have a much better estimating piece of software than what is commercially available. And I use commercial software. It's the best one that I could find in the price range that I can afford. It's really not great. It actually is pretty miserable in some ways. The ones that are really good, I can't afford because they're like thousands and thousands of dollars a month. And it's like, well, forget that. That's going to wipe out my income. So I can't go with that one. So I'm writing my own software. Well, the last time I worked on this project, I hadn't gotten very far with it. And it was all kind of kerfuffled and all twisted up into a knot. Nothing was working properly. So I sat down with it yesterday for the first time in a month after getting this LOA Today app to the furthest point I could get it. And I felt pretty good sitting down because I just got the LOA Today app to work. Okay. So, hey, I was feeling pretty good. Okay. So I started going after the first thing, and it was something that I remembered pretty quickly. Oh, yeah, that was really frustrating me. But today I felt a little bit better about it. So I said, I think we can get through this. I've been using AI to help me. I'm loving AI, by the way. AI has its limitations. We did a show on that, but it also has a real positive side to it. It's really very helpful. Yeah. So I've been using that, and it was helping me to solve things. And I had a breakthrough, and like, okay, that little piece worked better. Now the software wasn't working yet, but that one little piece was working better. Oh, okay, that's pretty good. I wonder if we can do that with the next piece. So did it with the next piece. I got to the point where all the major stuff was fixed, but I didn't want to stop fixing stuff because I was now in that groove, in that flow. And I just experienced like 3 or 4 of them in a row. Yeah. And everyone felt good. Like, I want to feel that again. So I was actually going in to fix stuff that really wasn't important to fix at all. Things like little stylistic things that, I could go after that, a few weeks later after the thing had been published if I really wanted to. Right. But because I wanted to get that hit of, and I knew I knew there was a very good chance I could fix it right there. I could get that hit one more time, get that feel one more time.
Yes.
And that's what I found myself doing today. I actually got, now the software doesn't do a whole lot yet, but what I was done with at the end of one day was clean, because I was getting all this energy out of fixing all this little stupid stuff that didn't matter.
What and what my business brain goes to when you tell me that, first of all, great story. Second, the software out there that is good costs thousands of dollars a month.
Right.
Well, if you could bring this together and make a good product, you can undercut them and
Oh,
do
the thought occurred.
yeah. So but that's how my business brain goes. I mean, yeah, it's great for your cut, but see, that's the synchronistic, coincidental, whatever you want to call it. That's the stuff that happens. You're working on your app. You do. That's how fortunes are made. That's how you never that pay attention to everything. Don't discount anything. And that's why I like to listen to all the deals that come my way. Some are great, some are terrible. I like to listen to them all, but I also, one of the greatest ways to make money is find areas that there's a need. I would never have thought about gardening estimators as being a need, but it clearly is.
Yeah.
Now, but the fact that you're doing this, if you get a solid product that somewhere fits in between the cheapies and the expensive one, you might have a gold mine in your hands.
Oh, but I really don't have any doubt about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that I love. So there's always something like that out there. Some of these most ingenious, the idea, the most simple idea of Uber, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just angry I didn't think about it. It's just it's so simple. It's now, I never would have had the technology skill to get, but the concept, like, why didn't I think of that? Why, Airbnb? It's just, these are really simple concepts of when you Uber changed the world. I mean, the way it changed. For example, cab services don't really exist the same way they used to exist.
True. Yeah. And you're right. It does change the world. I think my cat is wanting a whole lot of attention right now. So if you hear the microphone being knocked, that's what that is. But I think the point I was trying to make is I could get myself all wrapped up with, oh my God, this could become a thing. I could make a lot of money doing all this. And I'm deliberately not doing that.
No, yeah. And that's the strategy. If you do that, I promise you it won't.
It won't. Exactly.
But that's sort of the touch you need to put on it. That's the finesse of it.
That's right.
Plant the seed. It's there. Hey, if this works out great, I can do it. But don't make that your point now. Stick with your original plan.
Yeah.
You want to make good, and you're the beta tester anyway. See where this goes. Right. If it's something there, great. If it's not, but don't just get stuck on it. Like you getting stuck on stuff like that keeps other things from happening.
That's right.
And I don't know that you don't discover something within this process that will be applicable outside of this project as well.
Oh, I know. I already know a few of them for a fact right now. I mentioned I've got 4 projects. A third one I just came up with about a month and a half ago, and I've done a little very, very simple non-software testing to kind of reconfirm something that I've already known for years just from doing this podcast, which is we need connection. We human beings need connection, and I'm realizing people are all very, very interested in social media, have been for quite a few years now, about 20 years now, that it's really kind of taken over the planet. The thing that a lot of people point out is that social media has a lot of flaws, and we could go to town with what those flaws are. But for me, that adds up to one thing. There's actually no socializing. It's called social media, and there's no socializing.
Yeah.
That's like it's like this massive hole. Like, wait a minute, why are we calling it social media when there's no socializing?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, what we need is an app where there's actual socializing, where kind of like what you and me do. We do these video talks.
Right.
We have these conversations. That's where you make real connection, and that's what social media needs.
Well, yeah, and there's. The idea that social media, first of all, the definition of it has been it's way out there.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah. So, I don't think there's been a more negative impact on sort of socializing than social media.
Yeah, right.
It really, making a connection dating now with the apps, and I don't get a rant on all that, but the app is you're only looking at somebody's best picture they could possibly come up with, and whatever clever line they could put in their bio. That's what you're dealing with. You're not getting the person's essence, their actual human. You're missing that. It's like it's the metrics used for that aren't really solid in what at least what I would be seeking in a partner. But yet it's what mainly exhibits. And I have a really dear friend at this point. He's a client as well, and he's a 45-year-old man. He's divorced, and he has this incredible energy. He doesn't take a great picture. He doesn't. He's a sort of a little geeky in the Star Wars kind of thing. But he's hilarious. And he doesn't translate to the apps real well.
Right.
But in person, there's nobody better at making a connection than him.
Yes.
And that's that sort of also social media sort of inhibits synchronicity and coincidence sometimes. But when you're doing it all like they're doing, you're taking away the chance meetings a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure how to introduce the chance meetings, although I suspect that there's a way to do that. But what I do know is what I've been learning from building the LOA Today app and what I'm learning from building the Gardeners app is going to enable me to build a very simple app that makes it possible for people to do the kind of connection you and I are doing.
Yes. See, I would love there to be rooms like, I could sign on one night. I want to talk about the law of attraction. Somebody could pop on the screen, want to talk about the law of attraction. It's or whatever. I mean, I can see that having real communications, having mastermind meetings online is something that I love that idea. Just have mastermind groups where five to 10 people get together and just sort of do ideas.
Right.
And it's also sort of funny when there's tons of law of attraction groups online.
Oh yeah.
And I used to belong to all of them.
You were busy.
Well, I mean, I didn't participate always, but I had them, and then I realized it was, and I don't want to sound arrogant, but it was very remedial. And the arguments and stuff, I'm like, I got rid of all of them because they weren't, it just was a different thing. They were mistaken what it was.
Yep.
And, and I just, and then once somebody would look at my bio, then they're like, oh, well, I ask all these questions. I'm like, well, we're not going to, this isn't going to work because you have a false interpretation of what we're trying to do here,
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's part of a human tendency, I think, to want to say I'm right and you're wrong, but it's also part of just lack of information and lack of connectivity. I really think lack of connection is the biggest part of the whole problem.
Yes.
Even the people who are trying to be right, who are trying to say, you have the wrong approach to law of attraction, I have the right approach and all of that. For the most part, they're people who really are having trouble connecting.
Right. Well, what is also lost in when you're having a physical, a connection with someone, an actual connection. I can have somebody could, online, they could, cuss me out or say all these evil things. They would never say that to my face.
No,
never. And I'm not because I'm a big guy, strong. I mean,
that might be part of it, but let's be perfectly honest,
Yeah, but that it wouldn't end well. But my point is, but that's not what I'm talking about. I can have, I could be somewhere that a 12-year-old boy playing a video game could call me every name in the book. And if he were in my presence, he'd be scared to say a word. But he's empowered by the anonymity of it all. And so that's even that's a lack of connection that empowers that behavior.
Yes, that's a great point. And anonymity is valued in a huge way online these days. And I long ago gave up trying to help people understand who were fighting for their anonymity or their privacy. I long ago gave up the idea of trying to talk them out of it. But I kind of keep looking at them and saying, do you realize what you're doing to yourself?
Yeah.
Because I don't think they do. I really
either.
don't think they understand just how much they're isolating themselves just by making those arguments.
Yeah, it really does. So absolutely. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, as usual, we used an hour talking about some really cool stuff, and I look forward to the next one. I have a feeling that this is not going to be the last time we talk about synchronicity. I have a feeling it's going to be the last time we talk about so-called randomness. I think we're going to do it a few times.
I think we've done it probably 5 times in the last 2 months anyway. So
yeah,
whether that was the topic or not, we always get there.
Yes. Well, you'll remember a couple months ago we did it. You found a piece, I think it was online, about the possibility of quantum mechanics happening within the brain.
Yes.
And believe it or not, that's our most popular episode of all the episodes we've done in the last few months. That
really?
one has risen to the top. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's an example of how this is a thing.
I love it. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Pretty cool stuff. So anyway, thank you much. Look forward to talking to you next week.
Awesome. Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.